Somewhere on a factory line in Tianjin, China, a Toyota sedan is rolling off the assembly belt right now, with a battery pack stamped by its biggest rival. Not a supplier nobody's heard of, BYD. The same company Toyota spent 2 decades treating as an afterthought is now the reason a Toyota-badged car can even compete in the world's largest EV market. For a company that built its entire reputation on doing everything itself, that is not a small thing to admit. So what actually forced Toyota, the most self-reliant automaker on the planet, into bed with the enemy? And is this partnership a sign of weakness or the smartest move Toyota has made in years? For decades, Toyota ran on one core belief: build it yourself, control every bolt, trust no outsider. The Toyota production system became the blueprint every other manufacturer copied, and the Prius made Toyota the undisputed king of hybrids. Full electric vehicles, meanwhile, got treated with quiet suspicion. Toyota leadership bet on hybrids and hydrogen, convinced the market wasn't ready to go all in on batteries. Then China stopped waiting. New energy vehicles, the term covering EVs and plug-in hybrids, crossed 50% of total new car sales in the country. Combustion engines and traditional hybrids started bleeding market share almost overnight, and Toyota watched its own gas and hybrid sales in China drop somewhere between 15 and 20% in under a year and a half. That is not a slow fade. That is a market flipping underneath a company that had never once been caught flat-footed before. Here's what makes this genuinely surprising. Toyota isn't some struggling brand playing catch-up out of desperation. This is the company every automaker on earth studied for manufacturing discipline. And even Toyota's playbook had no answer for how fast China's EV shift was moving. That is the real headline buried underneath this story. Now, most coverage skips the part that actually explains why Toyota needed BYD specifically, and it comes down to money and time. In an EV, the battery is the single most expensive component, often 30 to 40% of total production cost. Get that number wrong, and your margins vanish before you sell a single car. Toyota faced a brutal choice: spend years and billions building its own battery supply chain from scratch, securing lithium, nickel and cobalt, and slowly climbing a manufacturing learning curve, or find a partner who had already solved the problem. Every quarter Toyota spent building that supply chain alone was another quarter of losing ground in China, watching local rivals ship new EVs while Toyota was still locking down raw materials. Time, not cash, was the real constraint. And time is the one thing money can't buy back. That is exactly what led Toyota to BYD's Blade battery. BYD didn't start as a car company. It began in 1995, making batteries for mobile phones. And that origin matters, because BYD controls its battery production from raw cell to finished pack. Most premium EVs run on nickel manganese cobalt chemistry, which packs in energy density, but comes with real thermal runaway risk and a steep price tag. BYD went with lithium iron phosphate instead, cheaper materials, far more stable chemistry, and a lifespan measured in thousands of charge cycles. Then there's the design that gives the battery its name. Rather than stacking bulky modules with wasted space, BYD arranges long, thin cells, like blades, directly inside the pack, skipping the module stage entirely. That trick alone boosts energy density by roughly 50% over traditional LFP packs. Put it together, and the Blade battery holds up for more than 3,000 charge cycles and costs 20 to 30% less to build than an equivalent nickel-based pack. If you want proof of why Toyota trusts this thing, look at the nail penetration test, the industry's most brutal safety check, where a nail gets driven straight through a charged cell. A standard nickel-based battery spikes past 900 degrees Fahrenheit almost instantly and erupts into flame. BYD's Blade battery, under that same test, holds a stable surface temperature and produces no smoke and no explosion. For a brand whose entire identity is built on the word reliability, that single result matters more than any spec sheet. This alliance isn't a last-minute rescue. It traces back to 2019, when Toyota and BYD formed a 50-50 joint venture for shared research and development. BYD brings the EV platform, the battery, and the motors. Toyota brings vehicle engineering, quality control, and decades of brand trust. The clearest result is the Toyota BZ3 sedan, built specifically for China, priced from roughly 170,000 yuan, close to $24,000 US. Buyers get up to 380 miles of range on China's test cycle, with fast charging from 30 to 80% in under half an hour. It launched to over 5,000 orders on day one, and Toyota's own engineers later admitted the development process broke nearly every rule in Toyota's traditional playbook, forcing late-stage redesigns that would have stalled a project like this for months back in Japan. And if you're the type of viewer who actually tracks how these global shakeups trickle down to pricing and resale value on this side of the Pacific, this is exactly the kind of story worth staying close to. So take a second and hit subscribe on AutoCull so you don't miss what comes next. Here's the part skeptics get wrong. This isn't Toyota waving a white flag. Behind the scenes, Toyota is pouring resources into next-generation solid-state batteries, targeting a commercial launch between 2027 and 2028, with a driving range beyond 600 miles and charging that restores most of that range in about 10 minutes. The strategy is layered. Use BYD's proven technology to survive the immediate EV wave in China without burning years chasing a supply chain from zero, while a global hybrid business selling over 3.4 million vehicles a year keeps billions in cash flowing to fund that next leap. This isn't Toyota admitting defeat. It's Toyota buying itself the runway to win later on its own terms. Step back, and the lesson goes beyond these two companies. In this industry, supply chain flexibility has quietly replaced absolute self-reliance as the real competitive edge. The automakers still clinging to the idea that everything has to be built in-house are the ones most likely to get left behind, while the ones willing to borrow, partner, and adapt are the ones still standing when the dust finally settles. So here's the question worth sitting with. Is this the smartest move Toyota has made in a decade? Or is it the first crack in an empire that once refused to depend on anyone? Drop your take in the comments. I genuinely want to know which side you're on. And if you want to catch our next breakdown on how BYD went from an obscure battery startup to a company the world's biggest automakers are now lining up to partner with, subscribe
Electric
to
vehicle
AutoCull
production is
so it lands
scaling up,
right in your
but the
feed.
cost of raw materials
Thanks for
is
watching,
soaring.
and I'll
Heavy
see you in the
capital
next
investment
one.
puts